So the highly anticipated Resident Evil Village, or also known as Resident Evil 8, released this week, followed by solid reception from both fans and critics. I also finished the game and had a great time with it, but there was something missing. Where in the world is PSVR support for this game? RE7 is literally my favorite VR game, so the lack of PSVR support at launch is disappointing to say the least. But this situation isn't devoid of hope. I believe there is still a solid chance of PSVR support. So today I'll be discussing both my personal thoughts on the subject, as well as some info from others online. But before we get into that, I must first say that there is no official word from Capcom about VR support. So if you clicked on this video expecting confirmation, I'd like to get that out of the way so you're not watching the entire video waiting for that. This video will be more focused on speculation, as well as some info from others. I wanted this video to not only be my own speculation and opinions, but I wanted to bring in some sort of outside source. The first person that came to mind was Aesthetic Gamer, aka Dusk Golem. He's someone who is known for leaking info all about Resident Evil. Now, I personally don't know much about him beyond what he has said, so I don't know where he gets his information from, and I'm not a huge fan of leaks in general, but from what I've seen, most of what Aesthetic Gamer has said in the past turns out to be true, at least in the case of Resident Evil 8. For example, a few months ago he revealed the plot in the first 30 minutes of the game, which I won't discuss here for spoiler reasons, but upon reading it after playing the game, he was spot on. I'll have a link in the description if you've already seen the beginning of the game and want to check it out. I'll also have my other sources linked in the description as well. So what does Aesthetic Gamer have to do with PSVR support? Well, he's discussed it a few times in the past. Back in June 11th of 2020, Aesthetic Gamer said this after the initial reveal trailer. For anyone worried about RE8's frame rate, don't. The trailer played kinda weirdly on the stream, but the game does support PSVR from what I hear, so they will be aiming for a stable 60 FPS. Which sounds great and all, but shortly after, he made another tweet saying this. It did support PSVR, but also the game was cross-gen a few months ago. So I don't want to say anything definitively true here on that, since we're at the things can change in development stage. So if we're taking Aesthetic Gamer's tweets as truth, at one point there was PSVR support, but as the game was in changing development stage, he couldn't confirm support for the final release. PSVR fans, including myself, were unsure for a while, and we didn't hear much from Aesthetic Gamer until January 21st of 2021, in which he said, "I know VR was in at some point, I don't know the current status. To do VR they need a consistent performance for motion sickness, I guess to see." And sadly that's about where it ends for leaks about PSVR, which is why I wanted to start the discussion with the leaks. As from here on out, I'm going to build upon these tweets with my own speculation. I believe a major piece of the puzzle has to do with last generation hardware, meaning the PS4 family of systems. But to explain why, we first have to rewind back to RE7. Before the release of RE7, several players were worried about how the game would turn out in VR, as some of the demos shown at E3 were struggling to reach 60 FPS on PSVR, and therefore making people sick by playing it. Luckily, Capcom managed to get RE7 to run well and still look great in VR by launch, but to me I don't think it would be the same case for RE8. I think that it would be more difficult to put RE8 in PSVR because for a while RE8 wasn't even going to come out for PS4. Back when the game was announced, they only mentioned PS5 support, and it wasn't until a few months ago at the January Resident Evil showcase that they announced there would be a PS4 version of the game, after they successfully optimized it for older hardware. So naturally I would think it would be difficult to get it working on PSVR if they weren't even confident it would be able to work on PS4 for most of the development time. And now upon the release of RE8, it appears that the PS4 version of the game runs at 45 to 55 frames per second, depending on whether you're using an OG PS4 or a Pro. Sony's minimum frame rate for PSVR is 60 FPS, otherwise it'll make people sick like I mentioned earlier. So when you combine the challenge to put the game on PS4, the minimum frame rate for PSVR, and the much more open and ambitious game that is RE8, it appears that a PSVR version would be much more difficult to bring to life, at least without major sacrifices. But while what I'm saying might get your hopes down, there's still hope. My main reason that I believe RE8 will get VR support is because of PSVR 2. If you weren't already aware, Sony announced this new headset several months back. So if they decide to release RE8 VR alongside PSVR 2 as a launch title, that will not only entice people to purchase the new headset, but it will show off how powerful the PSVR 2 is when combined with the PS5. A big problem with developing for PS4, from how I perceive it, is that you're having to make a game that works across all PS4 platforms, meaning the OG PS4 and PS4 Pro, which at the oldest is over 7-year-old hardware. When developing for PSVR 2, you not only have the new technology to work with, both console and headset wise, but you won't have to worry about developing for an entire family of systems. I can go on and on with speculation, but where it either rises or falls is depending on whether or not Sony is willing to invest in an RE8 VR mode. We've seen that Capcom is willing to make Resident Evil VR games, with both Resident Evil 7 and recently with Resident Evil 4, so if Sony is willing to invest in a big title for PSVR 2, I have no doubt we could be playing RE8 in VR within the next couple of years.